get to be here and see these talks today too, and I'm super excited about today. The Jim Crow Museum is just an amazing place. Um, I will be keeping track of time, so I'm going to let everybody know when there's about 10 minutes left for questions and answers, and we can wrap up and make sure we get to the next sessions on time. But this session is being recorded, so you'll be able to revisit it whenever you need to. So it is my pleasure to introduce Susan Bonner and William Fischer. They have their presentation that KCAD collaborates with the Jim Crow Museum, creating inclusive media that go beyond accessibility. So take it away.
Thank you, Lee. Bill, are you able to share your screen? I believe you're the...
Yep.
I knew I should have had an applause sample ready.
Well, you can do that as we work here. Well, welcome to everybody, and we're excited to share with you today the Jim Crow Museum of Racist Memorabilia, Achieving Despite Resistance and Universal Design for Media. These animations were a collaborative project by the students and faculty of Kendall College of Art and Design of Ferris State University, KCAD, and the Jim Crow Museum as a part of the EPIC project. And today we're presenting to Hatch, which is where good ideas are born. A bunch of us are collaborating and finding out how we're being innovative in our classrooms and moving into the world. And that's what Bill and I will be showing today. Many of our students are in the audience today, so I'm excited that students that have worked on this project will be able to see, and then students that are currently working on it will be learning about universal design as we go. So next, Bill. So the EPIC project is the main umbrella here. The animations that we're creating, the Achieving Despite Resistance animation, are part of that. You can find our link here, epicsite.org, and maybe Bill can put it into the chat for us. The EPIC project is KCAD faculty and students collaborating with professionals, schools, and organizations. We produce free, innovative media that helps teachers create engaging classrooms and community advocates of moving beyond population's reaction to action. So, Bill, you've got our numbers there.
Do you want me to read
talk about our, yep, that's your slide.
Oh, I thought you were doing all these. So yeah, we've done 42 projects, 200,000 students in public, and that's a very conservative estimate have engaged. With the media, 382 KCAD students, 400 K-12 students helped develop and user test, 12 faculty members, 25 professionals and experts from the outside of the school. So we've been doing it about 8 years, and we've got a lot done.
A lot of impact. When you look at the numbers of people, they're all people that are using our content.
These are some of our main collaborators: Grand Rapids Public Museum, now the Jim Crow Museum, OST, Mental Health America, Western Michigan University Art Prize, Education. Fundamentals of our mission: creating engagement, maximizing retention, supporting teachers, providing free access to media, promoting inclusivity, and exploring neurodiversity and amplifying voices and energizing Black history. A new thing for us this year. Several design methods this is where our innovation and research comes in, with socio-emotional strategies, inclusive and universal design, and collaborative processes. And then we do user experience testing and analyze the data, and we try to imagine the future, and we engage with field experts and get their help and feedback.
Right, so this last semester, we had the honor of collaborating with the Jim Crow Museum, and we have several of those people in this audience here. Give a shout out to Franklin Hughes, and I think I saw David Pilgrim earlier in this group. So the achievers that we wanted to bring attention to were the Harlem Hellfighters from World War I, Leontine Price, the epic singer, opera singer, Garrett Morgan. Did you know that he invented the the very first version of the traffic light. Rube Foster, the creator of the Negro League, Shirley Chisholm, the first woman to go into to be a national female politician running for office as a president. And right now we're working on Percival Prattis, who is a reporter. So one of the things that we did with the class and in the collaboration with the Jim Crow Museum is we went on a virtual tour. So go ahead and click on that, Bill, and we'll take you to it. I think you're not sharing sound, so you might need to stop and reshare.
I'll do that.
So a big part of what we're doing is we're bringing it's awesome. The Jim Crow Museum has a virtual tour. So with the pandemic, it's amazing that people from all over the world can get into it. So let's just take a look at this very first part here. I think you got to go backwards one.
That you're going to be working on politicians, thinkers, inventors, military people. There were so many great Black achievers, and we really need to highlight and celebrate them.
So that's Cindy, who's one of the educational directors there. And so this is our group of students that was visiting the tour at that point. Go ahead, Bill, next slide. And so one of the things that we want to do is understand the Jim Crow era and its impact on today, try to connect that time period to what's happening today. Go ahead.
In order to get African Americans enlisted in the war. And there was sentiment from leaders in the Black community, particularly W.E.B. Du Bois and others that kind of thought at this time in the early World War I that if Blacks joined the military and fought the fight of the United States, that when they'd come back, they would be greeted, they would be accepted, they would be part of culture.
So that was Franklin. Thank you, Franklin Hughes, who's been working with us. So we really try to understand and bring it into today's world. Go ahead, Bill.
All right, so we're primarily today going to focus on the ICU design framework that we used. Some of you are in the process of learning it right now, and some of you here actually used it, but we're going to take a step back and kind of look at how well we did and an overall view of it. So ICU stands for Inclusive, Socio-Emotional, Entertaining, and Universal Design. And the goal of the framework is to increase engagement and retention and the understanding of knowledge. I'm sure we've all experienced educational, informational media that maybe was less than exciting. A long time ago, when my son Dylan started going to school, and I was looking over his shoulder, and I'm seeing the media that he's watching as part of his schooling, and I'm thinking, this stuff is, excuse my language, crap. It's terrible. So 1 minute he's watching, these really highly produced, engaging, animated series on Cartoon Network, and then he goes to school and he's watching animations and they're just garbage. And I think, well, something's wrong here. I mean, what's more important, entertainment or education? Why aren't we investing in high-end media for education? And that was kind of the seed for the EPIC project. So inclusive design on this project's pretty easy. Well, I don't know if it's easy, but it's an easy thing to talk about. It's Black history is, and this is Susan's little phrase, U.S. or us history. I think that that's the inclusive part of this particular project, is to amplify Black history. Socio-emotional design, that's the first two SEs. We're really looking at brain science here. We have 4 parts of our brain that we're trying to engage. The primal brain, that's the lizard brain, they sometimes call it. It's the pure emotion. We try to do that right at the beginning of an animation to prime people's endorphin, creating system, and then get them engaged, especially in a classroom. Starting with a big bang really gets the attention and the focus of a classroom of 30 young people who have plenty of distractions. Our knowledgeable brain, and that's where we're trying to inject things into long-term memory. There's been a lot of studies around the idea that images, sound, and motion together engages more of the brain, in which case it increases retention of the knowledge. Our logical brain, we need to offer a value proposition. Why does this matter? Why does this matter to you as a viewer in this case? Then we have our tribal brain, and psychologists will tell you that the longing to belong is, with no close second, the biggest motivator of behavior for the human species. So we need to address that as well.
So when you look at these animations, you should look for all of those little elements.
Yeah. So we're going to start with our primal brain. So I mentioned starting off with a bang to get the young people's attention and to kind of get excited about what's going to be happening.
What was life like before Garrett Morgan invented the 3-signal traffic light?
So that's the intro to that one. Is this loud enough? Can y'all hear it okay? Okay. So that's a little engagement of the primal brain. Let's just, do something really, kind of in their face, get some emotions going. Our knowledgeable brain, this is a lot of information in this scene for the Harlem Hellfighters. And through image, sound, motion, and emotion association, we're hoping that, this information is gonna build a lot of synapses between the different parts of our brain that are accessing the information and keep it in long-term memory.
Ferris Institute student Percy A. Fitzgerald wrote while serving in France, "During the Big Drive, our boys took an active part. The regiment was in for 12 days and came out much smaller than it went in. Most of the fighting was in the open, with no trenches." While winning many battles and suffering 1,500 casualties, white soldiers still refuse to acknowledge their courage.
That's so well done. So, every time I see that, I really feel some emotional connection to what's.
Yeah, actually
what
go
happened.
back
Yeah.
one slide to analyze that a little bit. So long-term memory, image and sound and motion, that's all in there. And that's how we push these ideas. It's not just history, it's emotion.
Yeah, sound played a big role in that. Not only Sarita's delivery of the narration and the inflection that she had, as she went through, as it changed. She didn't just read it straight, and then the music, good stuff. So our logical brain, why does this matter? And what should I do now? You've told me this. So what? Right? So we need to tell them, so what?
Barack Obama posthumously awarded her the Congressional Medal of Honor.
And I'm proud to say, Shirley Chisholm had guts.
Shirley Chisholm famously advised,
"If they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair."
"Where are you going to bring your folding chair?"
So we call that a call to action, right? This is what I think you should do now that I've told you this.
So shout out to our voice actors there, Franklin
Yeah.
Hughes, Elise Bone, and Barack Obama. They're all here in the audience today.
That's right. That's right.
Yes, yes, yes.
So our tribal brain, connecting them with society and culture we live in today, and provide a call to action. So let's watch that one.
Leontine Price persevered by letting her performances speak for themselves. We may not have voices like hers, but we do have our own unique voice that we can use to fight for equality in music and everywhere else.
So next we have universal design. Universal design is the idea that we're designing for everyone, including persons with disabilities. So I like to say that 150% of the world's population is sometimes disabled. We've all had experiences where we've had situational or temporary limitations like attention difficulty due to tiredness or overly bright rooms. How many times we've been in a classroom and all the lights are on and the teacher's projecting a video on the screen and we can hardly see it. Places where audio is not welcome, like on the bus or the train. Maybe you had an ear infection and your hearing is not so great for a short period of time. More permanent disabilities, 15% of adults have some kind of hearing impairment. About 2.5% of all persons are living with visual impairment. 4.5% are colorblind, 20% affected by light sensitivity at some point, typically caused by an injury, cataracts, or migraines. 7.5% of all persons are challenged by cognitive disabilities like ADHD and dyslexia. You add that up, that's 50% population. That's where I get my 150%. Let's make this personal. Let's take this survey. I'm going to grab this link.
I already put it in the chat.
Okay.
And so the link's in the chat, and I also just want to say that when you take the survey, the answers will not be linked to who you are, so they'll be anonymous.
Right. So go ahead and take that survey, and let's see how connected we are to these disabilities. Now we've got about 25 people here, so I'm not going to the next slide until we get everybody to participate.
Come on, Barack Obama, you've got to on your pencil and.
Yes. All right, 21 responses. Almost there. Somebody skipped that question. All right, that's probably pretty good. So yeah, as you can see, we are all touched by every one of these, or most of these. 80% on vision impairment, 64% for color blindness, 90% for migraines. Just went to 92. 70% for hearing impairments, 83% for ADHD, dyslexia, and those types of cognitive challenges, 78% for those temporary situational issues, another 91% for situational issues with video, and then tiredness, 87%. So we're not talking about some obscure small set of the population here, really. We are all touched by this.
Yeah, it's unsettling, right? So we want to do something about that.
So there are also legal obligations. Title II and III of the Americans with Disabilities Act, plus Title I and II of the Communications and Video Accessibility Act say all places of public accommodation are required to create accessible media. So what is the place of public accommodation? This has been the source of many lawsuits over the last several years because the laws were written before the internet. And so folks have been saying, well, I'm not a place. My website, my video online, YouTube, it's not a place. But all of the lawsuits, probably about 1,000 now, all of the courts have said, no, the internet is a place and it needs to accommodate. So K-12 and higher ed, public transportation, healthcare, all the government agencies, organizations receiving government funding, daycare services, banks, grocery stores, and on and on. Any place that serves the public in any capacity needs, and when they put media out, it needs to be accessible. So I first learned about accessible design when Kendall and Ferris, along with every other institution in the state of Michigan, were sued for not having fully accessible websites. So I thought, okay, I need to call everybody I know and see if they're on top of this. And so I called all the media companies that I've worked with and all of my friends over the years. And they're like, yeah, we're kind of working on it. We put tags on our images and our websites. Does that count? Yeah. I thought, oh boy, this is a big problem. No wonder they're suing because no one's paying attention to these laws. And I started looking into accessible media. And the first thing I kind of realized was the accessibility laws only ask us to provide access. It doesn't ask us to provide a quality of experience. It's not a qualitative proposition. So we can have something really nice for people that don't have sight or hearing impairments. And then we can have garbage for the others as long as they can access the information. Let me give you an example. So, oops, this is this is an animation that we made.
Anxiety disorders are the most common mental illness in the U.S.
Go up to
of people 18 and over. It balloons. Your heart races, but you can't breathe. You just feel the air getting caught in your throat.
Okay, so that's the standard version. This is the version that's audio described, and this is for people that are sight impaired. I'll try to find that same section.
Anxiety disorders are the most common mental illness in the U.S. They consume you.
The person melts into a puddle. People around them are oblivious.
And it feels like no one else can see you struggling, which just makes it worse.
Someone asks, "Have you tried yoga?" The puddle furrows their brow.
So we've got this extra voice, right? This add-on. It's clearly an add-on. It's not integrated. It's not meant to be a quality experience. In fact, the standards for audio description, many of the standards that I've seen say, speak in a neutral voice. Okay, so they're like telling us to actually dumb it down, And here's captions. Let's watch this captioned video. This is something we made in one of my classes.
Let's hit the lights and do a mic check.
Let's get to the action at the end here.
Really listen to what you're saying.
And try to read those captions and watch the action in the video at the same time.
Share our stories and inspire openness and vulnerability in auditoriums.
Almost impossible, at least for me.
I feel like I can connect with people and that we all have something in common when we speak.
I mean, we use creative writing to motivate.
I ask almost everybody I know these days, when you're reading captions on videos, do you feel like you're having to make a choice between the reading and the watching? And without exception, everyone says, yes, I have to make that choice. So that's not a quality experience either. We're all patting ourselves on the back for captioning, but really it's not that great. So this is where the difference between accessible design and universal design really starts to come into play. Universal design aims to create an experience for persons of all sensory abilities to fully participate in the experience together, the same place, at the same time, on the same channel, with the same quality. So you can imagine like a classroom where you have all these mainstreamed people and they're all watching, let's say, a video. And we don't have the audio descriptions turned on for Betty, and we don't have the captions turned on for George, right? It's just a video and it works for everybody. And that's universal design, and that's our goal. So some of you students have been through this painful experience of writing a script, which is hard enough. And now on top of that, we are adding this idea that we're going to write in a visual narrative form. We're also going to write in the sound design at the same time. So we have this scene that we wrote. The narrators, this is for the Hellfighters. The narrator says, they never lost a man through capture, lost a trench or a foot of ground to the enemy. So the visual is a soldier in mid-battle in a trench, and they shoot the rifle over the ridge. So with audio, how do we paint that picture? How do we paint that picture for somebody who can't see that visual? Well, we add somebody that says, hold the trench, men. And we throw battle sounds in, and then we have a single shot from a gun and reloading, and then another shot. So I know there's a single soldier in there. And so here's that scene.
They never lost a man through capture, lost a trench, or a foot of ground to enemy. Wrote historian Arthur W. Little.
So you see the sound design is doing a lot of work, and we added some words to the narration. They did change it as they made it. Instead of having an extra voice saying, hold the trench, men, they just added those words to the narrator. She said, never lost a trench to the enemy. So we're describing through audio what's happening in the scene. Sound design includes added voices, kind of modeled after radio storytelling programs like Prairie Home Companion. Let's watch this piece where the sound design has some added voices to help tell the story to the sight impaired person. Oops.
Her children's book, called Aida, is based on one of the world's best-known operas. The story's beloved, powerful,
look at them,
and beautiful characters are each represented by people of color.
Wow, she's a beautiful black princess.
So how do we know there's a beautiful black princess in this wonderful book, right? We have some child say, there's the beautiful black princess in this book, essentially. But the trick is to do it so it feels natural. It doesn't feel like an add-on, captions integrated near the action. So what we're doing here, this particular scene, I think they did an extra good job. So instead of having captions, we just integrate the text right in naturally, like it was always there, like it was always meant to be there.
In her first congressional campaign, her opponent, James Farmer, said, "Women have been in the driver's seat in black communities for too long. The district needs a man's voice in Washington, not that of a little school teacher." So she drove the neighborhoods with a loudspeaker saying,
Good job there, Elise Bone and Franklin Hughes. Isn't that interesting to see your two voices come together like that? I love the way they integrated that into the the speech bubbles, and it's just perfect. So we're watching captions, but we don't know we're watching captions. Pacing is important. I talked earlier about having time to read and watch at the same time. I think they did a pretty good job with that on this one.
You may know of the first African American to break the color barrier in the major leagues, Jackie Robinson, or Hank Aaron, the black player that broke Babe Ruth's impossible home run record. Well, they stood on the shoulders of Rube Foster.
So I think plenty of time to read those captions, and keeping the action there, but not so much that we can't, glance away, read, and then come back and still catch what's happening on the screen. Color blindness. Let's talk about color blindness. So this is the color palette right here on the right that we used for many years to do all kinds of color tests. This is what that looks like generally to a red-green colorblind person, which is about 99.9% of color blindness. You can see the red areas, green areas, less saturated by quite a lot. So I thought, well, what the heck? Are we just supposed to use yellow and blue? I thought, well, maybe not. Maybe if we think of color a different way, maybe if we think color as something that attracts attention, right? It's not a word that we use in color theory, but I'm throwing it in there. So if we think about attention, if we use red and green in a way that is desaturated, we can still use it, but we can also make sure that it's not going to attract, we're not going to be relying on it to attract a lot of attention, you see. So we can still have a full color palette, more or less, and not inadvertently use red and green in places where we're trying to attract a lot of attention, but we can still use it. Also, Americans with Disabilities Act has contrast ratio laws, actually. 4.5 to 1 for text and 3 to 1 for important graphical elements. And that has to do with a lot with those temporary lighting situations, like I described in the classroom with the bright lights and the cheap, projector displaying on the wall,
Or it's your phone with the light on it.
Right, you're outside, that sort of thing, yeah. So we did surveys and quizzes. All of our EPIC projects, we do some of this. We've only done one survey and quiz for this project so far. So we measure things like, did you find yourself reading the text? Were you able to read quickly enough to keep up? We did pretty good. You have to remember that we're innovating here. We're inventing methods. If we keep doing this, we're just going to keep getting better. I don't think that we've perfected all of this yet. I think we're still working on it. But every time we make media and we test it and we look at it ourselves and we analyze it, the next time we do it, we can do it better. No pressure on the students that are working on the animations right now. But we did pretty well, as you can see. Were you able to watch the animated action at the same time you're reading the text? Well, 43% said all of the time, 44% said most of the time. I'd like to see us be able to get both of these fields right here in the blue, right? That's our goal. So we're going to work towards that. We're going to keep trying things, keep trying methods, paying attention to what's working and best, and do more of that. Talked about the impact. We checked some of the emotions that people were feeling, empathy, inspired, empowered, sympathetic, and empathetic, almost a tie. So it's interesting to see, what the emotional impact was on our audience. And then here's a test. We did a little quiz, like how well, was the information retained? And I think we did pretty well here. You can see that we have a lot of red. This one, I screwed up the question. So that's a, because he's wearing all of these, I guess. So that was my mistake. That's why that
Okay,
one.
Bill, let's move on to the universal design next slide.
Okay.
Gotta
Right
close
on,
it
yeah.
up at 2:15.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, this is the end. So now that you know this, now that I've told you this, you can choose to be inclusive or you can choose to be exclusive. Okay. You can choose to be universal or you can choose to be accessible. So what's it going to be?
Mm-hmm. So let's take a look at it in the next images. Let's see how we use universal design in these epic animations. This is the Harlem Hellfighters.
The Jim Crow Museum of Racist Memorabilia presents the Harlem Hellfighters.
They never lost a man through capture, lost a trench, or a foot of ground to enemy. Wrote historian Arthur W. Little.
Look at these men lined up to do their duty.
The 369th Infantry was recruited as an African American unit known as the Harlem Hellfighters. Trained in the South, they were segregated and spent months as dock loaders.
Put your back in.
Constantly confronting bigotry from the United States Army. White American soldiers refused to fight with them.
We won't fight with you.
In 1918, they were welcomed to serve with a French Army unit who called them the Men of Bronze. They earned their Hellfighters name from the Germans, a term of respect.
The Hellfighters are attacking the tribes.
And experienced the most combat of any American unit. Ferris Institute student Percy A. Fitzgerald wrote while serving in France, "During the big drive, our boys took an active part. The regiment was in for 12 days and came out much smaller than it went in. Most of the fighting was in the open, with no trenches." While winning many battles and suffering 1,500 casualties, white soldiers still refused to acknowledge their courage. Though honored by the French military, as well as a Harlem parade attended by millions, they were still confronted by Jim Crow racism in the South.
Hey, you can't be in this diner.
And racial segregation in the North. These incredible individuals were instrumental to the progression of the rank of African Americans within the military, eventually culminating in George Bush appointing General Colin Powell to the rank of Joint Chiefs of Staff in 1989. Today, we are finally giving the Hellfighters the respect they deserve.
And here is our Jim Crow Museum Harlem Hellfighters display.
Perhaps we have learned to judge others by their accomplishments and not the color of their skin. This animation is a collaboration between the Jim Crow Museum and...
Okay, you want to watch next one or? We have
well,
time?
let's, can you go to slide 43, please? And let's give the people a choice of which one to watch. We have,
I'm not sure which, is that?
Slide 43. Keep going. You don't see it on the edge. Keep, click through then if you're just going, there, go back one. Sorry, everybody. Harlem Hellfighters, Garrett Morgan, Rube Foster, Shirley Chisholm, Leontine Price. These are our animations that we've done. We have time for one more, I think. What would you like to see? Let's hear a shout out. Unmute yourself. Shirley.
It's like Shirley's got it.
Yep, Shirley's There she goes.
The Jim Crow Museum of Racist Memorabilia presents Shirley Chisholm.
Shirley Chisholm once said,
Black male politicians are no different from white male politicians. This woman thing is so deep.
Playing congressman. Who does she think she is? Women.
in her first congressional campaign, her opponent, James Farmer, said, "Women have been in the driver's seat in black communities for too long. The district needs a man's voice in Washington, not that of a little school teacher." So she drove the neighborhoods with a loudspeaker saying, she won the election and became the first black woman elected to Congress. Representing urban Brooklyn, she leveraged her appointment to the Agricultural Committee to expand the food stamp program and improve nutrition for women and children.
Thanks for the apples, Mrs. Chisholm.
She eventually served on the Education and the Veterans Committees and co-founded both the Black and the Women's Congressional Caucuses.
We must serve all our constituents.
As the first black woman from a major political party to run for president, she was blocked from participating in televised debates.
It really is a shame that Shirley couldn't make it. Yes, it really is, Greta. Unfortunate.
She took legal action and was eventually allowed one speech. After surviving 3 assassination attempts, she remained, in her own words, unbought and unbossed.
Sorry I'm late. I ran into a little snag on the way here.
Chisholm served 7 terms as U.S. Representative, fighting for blacks and the poor. She once wrote,
I hope, if I am remembered, it will finally be for what I have done, not for what I happen to be. And I hope that my having made it the hard way can be some kind of inspiration, particularly to women.
Barack Obama posthumously awarded her the Congressional Medal of Honor.
And I'm proud to say, Shirley Chisholm had guts.
Shirley Chisholm famously advised,
If they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair.
"Where are you going to bring your folding chair?" This animation is a collaboration between the Jim Crow Museum.
All right.
We got our 2
That's really the
stars
question
Museum.
of universal design. Where will you bring your Foley chair? So I think that's all that we have time for in terms of showing the animations. We are going to have a premiere of animations on the, is it the 25th? Franklin, now you're in front of it. I'm trying to read it. 6 to 7:30 with a discussion. Black history is U.S. history. Is Black history us? Is it a part of our history? So we really want you to participate in that. And Bill, can you go to slide 42, which is design citizenship? Design citizenship is, let's hit play on Tracy Russo's file there.
Is that this one?
Mm-hmm.
Controlling the curriculum, knowledge is power. That's what's in and out of the textbooks. And I'm wondering, for all of you going forward in the field of media, working with this historical project, what do you think you will take forward into current projects if you were working on something, like issues of race or diversity that can be controversial, can be very emotionally loaded for people?
Mm-hmm. And then can you click on Nick
me,
Paul, the
as an artist,
student
I think,
reflection?
and
that one?
I think one important thing, like really big important thing that I've learned to take away is how to adapt my artwork to a different kind of like storytelling, where this one has a much more serious tone to it and it's really informative and it shares a lot of really important information with someone because.
All right, and then hit next, Bill, please. So we encourage everyone to ask questions. You can ask in the chat. or you can raise your hand in Zoom. I've asked a couple questions. Where will you bring your folding chair? If our folding chair is universal design, where can we actually bring it? Where are we gonna show it? I know Lee Davis, you have to do universal design and interior design, right? And John Maroney just joined in from industrial design. It's everywhere. Universal design is everywhere. Where are you all bringing universal design? But we want to just open it up for Q&A and just an open discussion at this point.
Susan, can I kick you off with a question?
Sure.
With the impact of Audible and podcasts and visual entertainment, visual news, visual information, far less reading, much less quick or speed reading in the generations today. How are you handling, how do you time out the text? How do you figure out how to give people enough time to read, and what is your guide for that?
Right, so that's a really good question, Lee. We work with a universal design framework for that, and we want to look at how can everybody read it. So our speech might sound a little bit slower than how I talk in normal life. And that allows for everybody to be able to read it, is our understanding. So it's 0.5 seconds per word, and we analyze it and we figure out the script and we write it out. We do a word count and then we time it out according to that. Right, animators?
Yeah, you know, the interesting thing about universal design is it's built on the concept of progressive enhancement. Also explain what that means. At the foundation of information is text, is words. You know, as in art school, we like to say a picture is worth 1,000 words, but I like to say a word is worth 1,000 pictures. So we start with text. Text is baseline. We can read text if we can't hear. We can hear text being read if we can't see. It has a very low footprint in terms of being able to transfer text information, let's say over networks. Everything else is an add-on. And we can add things for folks that have the senses that can experience them. So we can add visuals, right? If I can see a picture. So we can add pictures. We can add motion. That engages another part of the brain. Okay, so that's another progressive enhancement. We can add sound for people that can hear. And we can tell stories with sound. Also, we can add emotion. We can add Foley, another sound effects to tell stories. So that's another enhancement. But we could take all those away and just get back to the text. And if we write the text in a visual form, narrative format, that's our foundation that we build everything on. I have a friend, Gene Hanks, who's a designer who really is kind of been my mentor for universal design. And they always like to say, you know, we have the Harry Potter movies and we have the Harry Potter books. And if you ask somebody, you know, what do you like better, the books or the movies? Probably they're going to say, that's apples and oranges. I like the book, you know, in a whole different experiential way than the movie, you know.
Bill, do you want to stop share so you can see everybody in front of you?
Can do that.
That way people can raise their hands and maybe be seen.
Yeah, good idea.
And for those of you watching the chat, Susan did put the link in there for the event coming up.
I'd like to
and there's our Instagram page as well, where you're going to be able to see more things coming.
Shout out to Caleb and Jose, who worked on the animations. Caleb worked on Shirley Chisholm, and Jose worked on Rube Foster.
Nope, Jose worked on here. Oh, was Jose Rube Foster?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah. And we have many students right now that are working on Percival Prattis. Franklin Hughes is raising his hand. Franklin has actually done a lot of writing on Percival Prattis, but we'll take a question from you, Franklin, or a thought.
Yeah, I just want to ask the students that are here, has this experience made you more cognizant of the lack of universal design in everything that you see? And kind of what has your experience been after this?
Personally, I would like to say that I had my own I had my own ignorance towards this. I had no idea that this was such a big issue going on, and I'm much more attentive to the content that I make and the art that I make to make sure that people of all walks of life are able to enjoy the content that I make.
That's awesome. You brought your folding chair, Linnea.
Romer.
Howdy. So my experience with universal design in the past, or before I learned about it, I would always go for media that I'm color deficient, and I would always go in the past I would always go for media that took that into consideration or was built for that type of audience. Since then, I've found that building universal design media, it's an involved process, and I want to segue into a question about this, but I don't know if there's any other students that wanted to talk about the their experience with universal design.
Well, I think you can keep going, Ramar, if you want to.
Okay. I have a question for Bill then. Do we want to put universal design in every single piece of media? Or because in the past I felt like some media is better for a niche audience, or is focused for a certain aspect of the population.
That's such a good question. I ask myself that all the time. You know, in theory, yeah, I mean, we would just put it into everything. But, you know, if I'm going to create a document for a meeting, and I know the 5 people that are going to be in the meeting or a session, and I know that they're all fully sensed, you know, no, I won't. I won't, you know.
But I think I
won't
want
spend
to
the time
jump
to
in
put all the
here, Bill,
universal design
because
stuff, because it's a meeting, it's temporary. We're going to have it once, and then no one's going to see the stuff again. So there are certainly situations, I think, where it's okay.
I think that we sometimes don't know if people need any sort of accommodations. And by the survey that we just took earlier, we saw like 90% of people either had or people knew. Now, not everybody actually says, hey, I'm colorblind, or hey, I have migraines today. So if we are universal in our work, then you're going to be able to actually have more impact, because you're going to be able to share in a way where everybody can experience. And that's what our goal is right now in the EPIC project.
And on that note, I'm going to have to say, this is an excellent conversation and an excellent presentation, and we all need to think about not just ourselves understanding, seeing, and hearing things, but everybody. So you've got about 5 more minutes before the next presentations. So go back and look at your schedules and see where you'd like to be. And Susan and Bill, I'm sure, are available to have a further conversation if you want to connect with them through either the EPIC site or the KCAD emails or Instagram or any other number of ways. They are highly technically available. And thank you all for attending.
Thank you,
Bye,
Lee.
everybody.
Yep. And to my class, I'll see you back into the room at about 2:30. Thanks to all of our sound people, Elise, Mike,
Thanks
Franklin.